It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief. It was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. We had everything before us. We had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven. We were all going direct the other way. Charles Dickens' famous line, "It was the best of times and the worst," really, I believe, should be applied to family life. Life together, lived in a family, can help us achieve our greatest potential, and yet can haunt us at the same time, keeping us stuck in the past and unable to move past hurts to accomplish anything. Raising children is not an easy task. Parents themselves are grown-up children with past wounds and joys that tend to make parenting in different times a maze with no kind of view or clear view of the finish line. Here's a great example of family life in the news this past week. Ben and Jackie Belknap had spent many months saving over $1,000 in cash to pay back their parents for a loan given to them. Finally, after months and months of stashing away a few dollars here and there, they finally had the money to repay their loan, and they had placed it in a nice white envelope to give to them. When they went to retrieve the envelope to pay their parents, it was empty. Searching everywhere from upstairs to going through the trash, finally Jackie called out to Ben that she found the money. You see, Ben and Jackie have a 2-year-old son, Leo, who had found the money in the envelope and proceeded to put bill by bill into the paper shredder. Yeah, that's right. Leo shredded $1,000. Naturally, Ben and Jackie weren't happy, but at the same time, they also found the whole situation hilarious. They told the news, most people, they say, "Oh, a kid drew a crayon on the wall or something. I never heard of a kid shredding $1,000." I guess if there's any good news in this story is that the U.S. Treasury actually has a mutilated currency division, that if you send in the shredded money, they will put it back together, and in 1 year or 2 years, you'll get the money back. The price of family life. Paul's words in the letter of Colossians is written to Christians to help them understand what God intends for their family life together, both in their homes but also as a church family. Paul states that Christians are holy and dearly loved as God's chosen people. The family is the place where we are to experience and understand being dearly loved by God. Sadly, though, many of us don't experience this as his relationship of being dearly loved all the time in the family. Our families are full of broken people that always fall short of providing the love that we need in life. It is out of this brokenness that Paul calls us to clothe ourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience for one another. None of us have it in us to provide for all the love our family needs. We need to bear with each other, he says, and forgive whatever grievances we have against our family members. Why? Because harshness and revenge instead of compassion, selfishness instead of kindness, pride instead of humility, demanding spirit instead of a gentleness, and impatience instead of patience are destroying each other in the family. Consider the story of Joseph from Genesis. I'm going to use that to say, is this what Paul's saying true? Does the story of Joseph, for instance, say what Paul's saying is true? Joseph was born into a mixed family to Jacob, the 11th son of 12 boys. Now, since Joseph was born to his father Jacob in his old age, Joseph was his father's favorite. Never favoritism in families, is there? Tensions were high in this family because of Jacob's favoritism towards Joseph. When Joseph caught his brothers mishandling the family business, herds of sheep, he reported this to his dad, getting his brothers in trouble with their father and further isolating Joseph's brothers from him. No one likes a tattletale, do we? Jacob made it worse by making a richly ornamented robe or coat for Joseph. This coat became a symbol of Jacob's favoritism towards his son Joseph. It seems as if they had those yearbooks in those days, under Joseph's name would be the title most likely to succeed. The boiling points for Joseph's brothers were the dreams that Joseph had, and was so eager to tell his whole family. They were dreams of his brother and even his father and mother bowing down to him as a ruler. His father even rebuked Joseph, and his brothers were full of jealous hate towards Joseph. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers working in the field. When the brothers saw Joseph coming towards them, they plotted to what? To kill him. The oldest brother, Reuben, convinced the brothers not to kill Joseph, as he was their flesh and blood, their brother. Finally, the brothers came to the decision to sell their brother Joseph as a slave to people who took him to Egypt. The very family, who worshiped the true God, wasn't modeling compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience to each other. Joseph was even separated from his family, with all the privileges of his father being Father Jacob's favorite son, was torn away from him in life. Joseph, I assume, like many of us now, is looking to fight to survive lonely and alone in a foreign country. So Joseph was sold to an Egyptian government official named Potiphar. And as Joseph labors for Potiphar, Potiphar quickly realizes that every task Joseph is required to accomplish is done with excellence. So much is Joseph a benefit to Potiphar that his whole household is blessed by Joseph's talents and gifts, that Potiphar places Joseph in charge of his whole household. Just as success is within the grasp of Joseph, and he is forgetting the betrayal of his family, a problem develops in Potiphar's household. Potiphar's wife finds Joseph an attractive young man with a promising future and takes that attraction in a sexual manner. Joseph resists her, believing it would be wrong to sin against God's standard of marriage and commit adultery. You would think that Joseph would have felt that God deserted him, and who cares about being obedient to God? No, we find in Joseph a trust in God, even all that is bad that had happened to him. This trust is placed to the ultimate test next. Potiphar's wife is obsessed with Joseph, and when he resists her repeated advances, she blames him for sexual assault. Who are you going to believe, the word of a slave or an Egyptian official's wife? Joseph, of course, is blamed and thrown into prison. How can a prison be a part of God's love and care for his life? Paul says we are to let the peace of Christ rule in our hearts. This peace, the wholeness and wellness of God, is with Joseph, even in prison. The story of Joseph states that while Joseph was in prison, the Lord was with him. And Joseph was shown kindness and was granted favor with the prison warden. Joseph became successful with any task given to him again by the prison warden. Why? Because the Lord was with him. One of the key gifts Joseph was given by God was the ability to interpret dreams. It just so happened that two of Pharaoh's officials were thrown into prison, and Joseph interpreted their dreams. Sometime later, Pharaoh had a dream, and nobody could interpret it. One official whom Joseph had interpreted his dream told Pharaoh about Joseph, and Joseph was brought into Pharaoh's presence to see if he could interpret his dream. Joseph had come to realize by this time that all his gifts and talents were given to him by God as gifts. Joseph told Pharaoh that he couldn't interpret his dream, but that the God who was with him could. Even in his darkest moments, Joseph came to realize that God was with him, supporting him, showing kindness to Joseph that had not been shown to him by his own family. Joseph interpreted Pharaoh's dream about 7 plentiful harvests in the land, followed by 7 years of drought. Egypt, under Joseph's words from God, store extra grain in the 7 good years to prepare for the 7 years of drought. Joseph's interpretation saves Egypt from disaster and makes Pharaoh incredibly wealthy. As the famine in the 7 years is so severe that many other countries have to come to Egypt because Egypt was the only country with grain. Paul calls us to bear with each other and forgive whatever grievances you may have against each other. Why? He says, forgive as the Lord forgave you. You put on love for each other, for it is that love that binds us together. Joseph rises to the second most powerful man in all of Egypt. Joseph marries and has 2 sons. His first son is called Manasseh, which means he forgets. For Joseph said, it is because God has made me forget all my trouble and all my father's household. Joseph's second son was called Ephraim, which means twice fruitful. For Joseph believed, God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering. Now, though, the greatest test of Joseph's character was about to happen, as guess who came for food from Egypt? His brothers. How is Joseph going to respond now? Would Joseph, with God's love in his life, prevail to forgive his brothers and bind them once again together as a family? Joseph recognizes his brothers, but they don't recognize him. At first, Joseph is quite harsh with his brothers, treating them actually as foreign spies to Egypt. It is only when his younger brother, the son of his mother, comes to Egypt that Joseph can't hide his identity any longer from his brothers. When Joseph finally reveals himself to his brothers, they are terrified that he will what? Get revenge on treating him and selling him as a slave. Joseph reassures them by letting them know that God was in control of the whole situation, as he tells them that God sent him ahead of them to save many lives. As Joseph looked back at his life and what had happened to him, both the good and the bad, what did he see? He saw God's guiding hand, and so Joseph was full of gratitude to God, not because he was separated from his family, but because he saw God's saving hand at work in his life and in many lives. It is when Joseph sees God's love and care for him that Joseph extends the same love to his brothers, and their family is healed. A song of thanksgiving is sung at their feast, knowing that God is with them, bringing the compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, patience, and forgiving love that holds them all together. Gratitude and thanksgiving come into our lives through the love of Christ. A love that meets our deepest needs when all other loves fail us. Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, since as members of one body you were called to peace. Be thankful. Let the message of Christ dwell among you richly as you teach and admonish each other with all wisdom through psalms, hymns, and songs from the Spirit, singing to God with gratitude in your hearts. Whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him for his love that never fails. Shall we pray? Lord, as the psalmist wrote, we need to shout for joy to the Lord of the earth. We need to worship you with gladness, come before you with joyful songs, because you are the Lord our God. You are the God who has made us, and we belong to you. We are your people, the sheep of your pasture. So, Lord, we come before you in praise right now with our hearts full of thanksgiving. And we want to praise you. We want to give thanks to you and praise your name. For you are a good God, and your love endures forever. Your faithfulness continues through all generations, from Joseph to today, forever. Amen.